Elm commands are critical for getting data from external APIs. Remember how Elm's pure functions in a messy world means that you cannot just send a HTTP request since you might get different answers. Commands are a special type to help Elm web apps interact with the outside world while keeping the juicy benefits of pure functions which prevent lots of bugs. In a web app, the update function is responsible of sending commands to the Elm runtime. For example, the update function can send a command to the Elm runtime to ask it to send a HTTP request. When a user clicks the button to submit the order, the onClick event goes to the Elm runtime, which sends a message to the update function. In addition to updating the model, the update function also sends a command with the API request to the Elm runtime, which sends the HTTP request to the API server. The API server processes the request and sends back a response to the Elm runtime that sends a message with a response to the update function, which creates a new model and also sends an empty command to the Elm runtime, since it doesn't need to send another request. Next, the view takes the model and sends the output to the Elm runtime, which returns the updated web app back to the user. Overall, commands are a critical part of the Elm architecture, which enables web apps to talk to API servers. To use commands, we must modify the entry point of our shopping cart. So far, we called Browser Sandbox when starting it. Browser Sandbox allows us to work with user input, such as onClick events. As the name suggests, this entry point is a sandbox that prevents interacting with the outside world, so it cannot talk to an external API. Browser Sandbox is simple to use since it has 3 arguments: the initial model, the view, and update functions. Also, the update function only returns a model type, so it's not possible to use commands from a browser sandbox. Instead, we need to use browser element, which also works with user input. It allows talking to external APIs. The downside is that it requires more complex arguments. Furthermore, the update function must return a tuple with a model and a command, as we saw earlier. Let's have a demo to enable the shopping cart to talk to an external API. We need more complex arguments, so we'll define a new init function and a new subscription function as arguments to browser element. Also, we'll refactor the update function to return a tuple with model and command. Finally, we'll show the new status message on the web app since it's already part of the model. On the demo machine, replace browser sandbox with browser element. As usual, the compiler starts complaining about type mismatch errors and hinting us about what to do next. Hover the mouse over element and copy the record definition, paste it nearby to use it as a reference, press Ctrl/ to comment these new lines. We need a new init function. Enter init app and copy-paste its signature. For the actual definition, we don't care about any input flags, so use an underscore equal to a tuple. We still need the initial model like before, but we don't need any commands, so use command.none. The compiler is a bit unhappy, so hover the mouse for more details. As initial model has the capital model type, let's add it to the signature. Replace with the actual type. Also, we don't have any flags, so replace it with an empty tuple. Seems okay for now. Let's do the same for the subscription argument. Start typing subscriptions. Visual Studio Code already has a suggestion. Press enter and it takes care of the details. Awesome. Press F2 to rename it to subscriptions app to prevent any confusion with a similar field name. Let's update the arguments of browser element. The init field gets the new init app function. Update and view are already here. We need to add the subscriptions field, which gets the new function. Finally, the update function must return a tuple with model and command. Control-click update to go to its definition and change the return type to a tuple of the existing model and a command with a message payload. As expected, the compiler wants all case branches to return such a tuple. There are no real commands yet, so we'll just add some empty commands. Modify change quantity to return a tuple with the current model and an empty command. Make the initial model part of a similar tuple. Same for the add to cart branch. It returns a tuple with an empty command. Finally, for product quantity branch, tuple with an empty command. The compiler seems happy for now. Very good. Let's add the status message to the view. In the cart view definition, replace the promo message with the status so that it uses the special notice styling. Replace day promo of 1 with model.status. That was easy, right? These lines are no longer needed, so let's delete them. Save the file, switch to the browser, and refresh the page. Notice the new status message is displayed over here. Otherwise, even though we did lots and lots of modifications under the hood as preparations for talking to an API, the shopping cart just keeps working as before. Once the compiler is happy, then it just works. Awesome.